Welcome back. We were doing the chapter citizenship along with NCERT, and I'm continuing the same along with NCERT. In the last class, we have started off with the chapter and we discussed what is the concept of citizenship and then what are the aspects हम लोगों ने लास्ट में सब कुछ मतलब कि we had done and then we have also done the what we call as equal rights किसको हम कहते हैं. These are all some of the concepts we have already discussed. Now let us move towards the first. Citizen and nation. द कंसेप्ट ऑफ नेशन स्टेट ये हम लोगों ने फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन में पढ़ा था कि व्हाट डू वी अंडरस्टैंड बाय द टर्म नेशन स्टेट. क्योंकि नेशन स्टेट का मतलब होता है अ स्टेट यानी कि अ प्लेस एन एरिया वेयर पीपल आर लिविंग विथ शेयर्ड कल्चर सिमिलर हिस्ट्री. One of the earliest assertions regarding sovereignty of the nation state and democratic rights was made by the revolutionaries in France in 1789. This we have already discussed many times. Nation state claims that their boundary define not just a territory but a unique culture and shared history. जैसे उन लोगों ने फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन के दौरान एक फ्लैग, लैंग्वेज, नेशनल एंथम, ये सारे के सारे जो चीजें थी दे हैड मतलब कि डिवाइज्ड एंड दे सेड कि दिस विल बी हाउ वी वुड डिफाइन फ्रांस. Plus, they also set some ceremonial practices like हमारे यहाँ जैसा tableau होता है. That's unique to our country, among other things. Most modern states include people of different religion, languages, cultural traditions, but the national identity of a democratic state is to provide citizens with a political identity that can be shared by members of the state. They usually try to define their identity so that it is as inclusive as people, that is which allows all citizens to identify themselves as a part of nation. हमारे यहाँ पर we have been provided with many rights as well as many of the there are certain provisions, but in practice most countries tend to define their identity in a way makes it clear for some citizens to identify with the state than others. Means it is not, it may also make it easier for the state to extend citizenship to some people and not others. This would be as true of US, which prides itself on being a country of immigrants as any other country. But इतना नहीं है. Definitely वहां पर रहे हैं लोग, but the indigenous का मतलब होता है the one who are born and brought up. Whereas provision when we are giving it to someone. फॉर इंस्टेंस अगर हम यूएस को बोलते हैं तो यूएस, ब्रिटेन, Australia, if you see, they all are English dominant country. So what is the उनमें English dominant क्यों रहा है? And if we look into some of the historical evidences, history, तो मेकिंग ऑफ ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड में लास्ट ईयर हम लोगों ने पढ़ा था कि सम ऑफ द पीपल हु हैड माइग्रेटेड फ्रॉम यूरोप सेटल डाउन इन यूएस. बट हमारा ऐसा नहीं है. वी हैव आवर ओन कल्चर. वी हैव, फ्रांस हैज इट्स ओन कल्चर. फ्रांस फॉर इंस्टेंस claims to be both secular and inclusive. It includes not only people of European origin but also citizens that who came from North Africa. Culture and language are important features of its national identity. मतलब अगर आप same culture और language को follow कर रहे हो तो, and all citizens are expected to assimilate into it in the public aspects of their lives. और फ्रांस के अंदर ये एक इतना, मतलब if you see, it's a very मतलब unique thing that if you go to France, you need to understand French. वहां they take this much of pride. This much of pride. They may, however, retain their personal beliefs and practices in their private lives. They may seem like a reasonable policy, but it is not always simple to define what is public and what is private. By public life हम किसको बोलते हैं? Public means where you are exhibiting yourselves. Market में, in the monuments. That's public life. And private sphere is when you are inside your home. So where? What? Where? What? Religious belief is supposed to belong to private sphere of citizens, but sometimes symbols, practices may enter into public life. You may have heard about the demand of Sikh school boys in France to wear the turban to school and Muslim girls to wear the headscarf with their school uniforms. But this was not allowed. This was disallowed by some schools because वो नहीं चाहते थे कि ऐसे religious symbols को आप public sphere में लेकर आओ. Those whose religious did not demand such practices. Even in our school, in our country also, these kinds of controversies have been there. Like in some of the schools, they don't allow the Karnataka में काफी इस चीज के ऊपर अभी recently there was controversy that the girls were not allowed to wear the scarf or the burqa. This becomes really very controversial क्योंकि अगर हम secular कहते हैं तो we are allowing. On the other hand, it becomes difficult क्योंकि उनके अपने citizens ये चीज नहीं wear कर रहे. The indigenous French don't wear all these things. Those whose religions did not demand such practices naturally did not face the same problem. Clearly, assimilation into national culture would be easier for some groups than for others. In our country, also, this problem persists, and it would definitely persist unless and until we all become tolerant. The criteria for granting citizenship to new applicants varies from country to country. In countries such as Israel or Germany, factors like religion, ethnic origin may be given priority when granting citizenship. And there has been a persistent demand from Turkish workers who were at one time encouraged to come and work in Germany. अभी वो लोग वहां पे पैदा हुए हैं, बच्चे उनके वो वहीं पे सेटल हो गए हैं, so that their children who have been born and brought up in Germany should be automatically granted citizenship. But this has been a debate. These are only a few examples of the kind of restrictions that may be placed on citizenship even in democratic country which pride themselves on of being inclusive. मतलब जो कहते हैं हम democratic हैं, हम सबको include करते हैं, वहां पर भी ऐसे problems रहते हैं. And ये problem जो है, this is not something which is political, this is because of the different culture. और अगर ऐसे हम लोग सबको include कर रहे हैं, एक तरफ it's good, but on the other hand it will also go to heterogeneous culture which may spoil our own history और हमारा जो अपना culture है उसको हो सकता है खराब करे. India defines itself as a secular, democratic nation state. The movement of independence was a broad based one, and deliberate attempts were made to bind together of different regions, and culture. True. Partition did take place when there was difference between Muslim League and it could not be resolved. But this only strengthened the resolve of INC to maintain secular and inclusive character of Indian nation state, और इसीलिए शायद हमने उसी वक्त अपने आप को सेक्युलर बोला था. प्रैक्टिकली वहां पर भी प्रॉब्लम है, लेकिन फिर भी हम अगर कहते हैं सेक्युलर तो एक मतलब की चीज क्या है. इफ यू सी पाकिस्तान विच ऑल्सो कॉल्स इटसेल्फ डेमोक्रेटिक, तो or you call US, but when you enter over there you are supposed to give the exam of their own language. अगर आप पीआर के लिए जा रहे हो तो you need to, but in India you don't need to. How it is possible? मतलब how we are different. यानी कि हमारी जो सोच है वो उनसे ब्रॉड है. The Indian Constitution attempted to accommodate a very diverse society. Matlab, it attempted to give full and equal citizenship to groups as different as SC, ST, many women who had not previously enjoyed equal rights, some remote communities in Andaman and Nicobar who had little contact with modern civilization. You were not in my class, but in ninth standard, when I have taken this particular chapter, in geography, there is one particular island in Andaman and Nicobar which is not inclusive of anything of India. मतलब यहाँ पर वो हम इसलिए ले रहे हैं कि अगर आप उसके बारे में इफ यू गूगल इट, इफ यू look into YouTube, you will find the exact thing what I'm telling you. Sentinelese Island, Sentilese, Sentinelese Island. This island does not have anything what we think of modernity or even what we think of 1940, 50, 60, 70, 80 something, nothing. It's far, far away from modern civilization. It is just like you are living in the period of pre-modern era, जहां पर लोग जो है भाला हाथ में लेकर रहते हैं. They don't wear the clothes, they are wearing the bark of the trees or the animals. They are not at all in contact with the modernity. That particular मतलब की जो area है which is comprising of a very little population is considered part of India, and India has given all the rights. In fact, there are certain privileges. Like we cannot go over there because that area is not safe from the civilization part of view. Anyone who has attempted to go over there are killed by them. Only the Indian जो हमारी army है, navy है, they are there as a guards at a place. So, but still, because Andaman and Nicobar has become part of India, because it was not part of India, it was completely a foreign territory. जापान के पे था, उसके बाद हमारे पास आया था जब सुभाष चंद्र बोस had hoisted the flag. But today we are providing them with all the rights. Goa was a Portugal colony, Pondicherry was, but today they are all inclusive. जब वो इंक्लूड हुए तो उनको वो हर चीज मिली जो दूसरों को नहीं मिली थी. मतलब it was included. It also attempted to find a place for different language, religion, practices found in different parts. जैसे हमने क्लास इसमें भी पढ़ा था फेडरलिज्म में, and we have also studied the same thing in what we call as आपका 10th standard. It had to provide equal rights to all without at the same time forcing people to give up their personal beliefs, language or cultural practices. मतलब हम लोगों को ये नहीं बोला गया था कि आपको अपनी लैंग्वेज या अपने पर्सनल बिलीफ को नहीं रखना. दैट इज व्हाई वी डू नॉट हैव एनी ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज. हमारा कोई नेशनल लैंग्वेज नहीं है. वी हैव द ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज हिंदी एंड इंग्लिश. हमारा जो है दोनों ही इंग्लिश और हिंदी दोनों जो है वो हमारा ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज है, दे आर नॉट नेशनल लैंग्वेज. नाउ व्हाट इज नेशनल लैंग्वेज मींस आपको उस चीज को जो है फॉलो करना ही करना है. बट नो, वी हैव नॉट फोर्स्ड इट. एंड द रीजन इज कि अर्लियर व्हाट हैपेंड इज हिंदी को जो है एक नेशनल लैंग्वेज बनाने की कोशिश की गई थी. On the other hand, if we look into the Hindi speaking people, it was only 40%. So they did not force everyone to learn. As अभी मैंने आपको यूएस या फिर किसी और कंट्री का बताया, लाइक इफ यू वांट टू स्टडी इन जर्मनी आफ्टर योर क्लास 12, यू नीड टू कंप्लीट A1, मतलब कि A+ जर्मनी आपका होना चाहिए, जर्मन लैंग्वेज आपको आनी चाहिए. हमने ऐसा कुछ नहीं कर रखा है. It was therefore a unique experiment which was undertaken through the constitution. The Republic Day parade in Delhi symbolizes the attempt of the state to include people of region, culture and religion. अभी मैं आपको पहले ही ये चीज को बता चुकी हूँ. I have already told this thing आपको. This I have told you. The provisions about citizenship in the constitution can be found in part 3 and in subsequent laws passed by parliament. हमारे यहाँ का जो भी provision है, they are all there. It adopted an essential democratic and inclusive notion of citizenship. In India, it can be done by first, but if you are indigenous descent, आपके मतलब कि ancestors, registration, naturalization, यानी कि over a period if you have been living here, or inclusion of territory, as I have given you the example of Andaman, Pondicherry, they all were included. The rights and obligations of citizens are listed in constitution. There is also a provision that the state should not discriminate against citizens on the basis of any of them, and the rights of religious and linguistic minorities are also protected. However, even such inclusive provisions have given rise to struggles, controversies. The women movement, the Dalit movement, struggle of people displaced by development project, आपका नर्मदा बचाओ प्रोजेक्ट, ऐसे कई प्रोजेक्ट्स है जिसके वजह से लोगों को एक जगह से दूसरी जगह पे जाना पड़ रहा है. तो इससे उनको ऐसा लगता है when they are forced to leave their land, even in fact I can say when metro was constructed, not only in India, abhi recently I had gone to Ayodhya, there also a number of development project के लिए बहुत सारे घरों को तोड़ दिया. नाउ दिस डिस्प्लेसमेंट व्हाट इट सेज, अगर आप कहते हो राइट टू आपका जो है फ्रीडम है, देन वेयर दैट राइट वेंट. दे फील दैट इट इज नॉट फुल राइट्स और सिटीजनशिप. The experience of India indicates democratic citizenship in any country is a project, an ideal to work towards. New issues are raised constantly and new demands are made when they are being marginalized. हमारे यहाँ पर भी वही तो मैं बता रही हूँ कि इफ यू लुक इनटू दोस एरियाज जहाँ पर डेवलपमेंटल प्रोजेक्ट्स हुए हैं, वहां पे लोग जो है दे हैव फेल्ट. नर्मदा बचाओ प्रोजेक्ट started by Medha Patkar is not only on the building up of the सरदार सरोवर डैम बनाने पर नहीं है, इट इज ऑल्सो ऑन द पीपल हु आर बीइंग डिस्प्लेस्ड. क्योंकि लाखों लोगों को अपनी जमीन अपना जायदाद छोड़कर दे आर फोर्स्ड टू मूव समवेयर एल्स. एंड द क्वेश्चन अराइजेस, व्हाई शुड वी गो. हाँ, आंसर है कि फॉर द बेटरमेंट ऑफ सोसाइटी, लेकिन क्वेश्चन आता व्हाई ओनली मी. दैट्स अ मी. Because such developmental projects or such जो movements होते हैं, they are only for the marginalized. It doesn't come for the rich elite. उनके लिए नहीं आता है. तो then the question arises, the differences arises, the controversy, the debate arises. Now the concept of universal citizenship and global citizenship. नेशन स्टेट तो हमारा हो गया, एक नेशन में रहते हैं तो नेशन किसको बोलते हैं, and what are the aspects if we want to get the citizenship. And as I told you, citizenship अगर आप apply करते हो by birth, आपके parents यहाँ पैदा हुए हैं, you have been living in that area for a period, for a given period. These are all the way you can get the, even the migrants के लिए भी आता है, लेकिन then there are certain rules and regulations for the migrants and illegal मतलब कि refugees. When we think of refugees or illegal migrants, many images come. सबसे पहले तो ऐसे लोगों को हम common people look at them at a perspective of threat. One may be of people from Asia or Africa who have paid agents to smuggle them to Europe or America, which is very common. अभी उस दिन आपको मैंने वो यूके का बताया था कि they say कि there are number of illegal migrants living there and they want to get rid of them. The risk, and some of them may be because of the war or famine, जो मैंने आपको 1970 बांग्लादेश वाला बताया था. The risks are high, but they seem willing to make the effort. Another image is the people who are displaced by war or famine, जो अभी आपको मैंने बताया. Some images are often shown on the television. Refugees in the Darfur region of Sudan. यहाँ पर इतना बुरा हाल है. If you look in Africa, Sudan, you will see that people are as thin as beanstick. Palestine, Burma, Bangladeshis. The examples are many. All these people who have been forced to become refugees in their own or neighboring countries. I have already discussed this. Bangladesh वाला मैंने आपके साथ discuss किया था. And there has been a number of protests. मतलब there have been number of protests in our country regarding the same. UN में भी उठाया गया था इस position, मतलब इस चीज को. इनके साथ क्या किया जाए? How? अब आपने भी उस दिन एक question पूछा था that if people are not having anything, वो यही लोग होते हैं. Either they may have given money and they want to migrate to other areas, or they may have been displaced. We often assume that full membership of a state should be available to all those who ordinarily live and work in the country, as well as those who apply for citizenship. But there are so many aspects. As I said, when you are applying for citizenship in US, Canada, they have a rule, they have a procedure. Means यहाँ से जब आप जाते हो तो there are certain permits. Work permit है तो वो किस तरीके का है, for how many years you are there, and then if you have been given the work permit continuously for 3 consecutive time, यानी कि 9 साल 10 साल आप वहां रहे हो, naturalization, तो आपको green card मिल जाता है. And then if your children are born or you have married someone there, then you by that मतलब की method you get the citizenship of that particular country. In Canada, while you are applying for your student visa, you can live over there for a minimum period, work there, get the work permit, then you can get the permanent residence, and then you can apply for the citizenship. Just imagine. But although many states may support the idea of universal and inclusive citizenship, each of them fixes criteria for grant of citizenship. I have already done this with you. This is the same for ऑस्ट्रेलिया, दिस इज द सेम फॉर फ्रांस, जर्मनी, बट वहां पर थोड़ा सा उनका जो लॉ है वो थोड़ा अलग है. और ये 3 कंट्री ऐसे हैं जहां सबसे ज्यादा लोग सिटीजनशिप के लिए अप्लाई करते हैं. These would be generally be written into constitution and laws of the country. State use their power to keep unwanted visitors out. Abhi recently, one of the president in one of the country had announced that if he becomes a president, then he would keep the illegal immigrants or the people who are coming from out will be thrown out. The मतलब कि क्योंकि change is possible, so they may. Earlier in mid 2000s, there were some criteria which were fixed. Then they were even tightened However, in spite of restrictions, even the building of walls or fences, considerable migration of people still take place in the world. It may be due to war, persecution, famine, other reasons. If no state is willing to accept them and they cannot return home, they become stateless people or refugees. They may be forced to live in camp or illegal migrants. Often they cannot legally work, educate their children, acquire property. This actually happened when there was a very dire situation in South Africa. And it was like they were all living in the camps. Or camps may there were no schools. And they were not allowed to go anywhere. And even जो men होते थे, they were allowed to go and work. The female were not. They were there was specific time when they could go out, buy the grocery and all. And property तो बहुत दूर की बात है. The problem is so great that UN has appointed High Commissioner for Refugees to try and help them. I already had told you this thing कि ये already जो है इस बात को मतलब UN में उठा चुके हैं. Since it is for all of the people who are moving as refugees. And practically इट इज रियली वेरी डिफिकल्ट. मतलब ये तो हम थियोरी में पढ़ रहे हैं, जहां हम पढ़ रहे हैं कि ऐसा हुआ था, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली आपको पता है द पीपल आर मतलब कि मिस ट्रीटेड लाइक एनीथिंग. दे आर मिस ट्रीटेड लाइक एनीथिंग. दोज पीपल हु लिव इन द shelters, they hardly have anything to feed. In some of the areas they are even termed as criminals, and certain work is not given to them. ये उन लोगों की मतलब होता है जो लोग मतलब वॉर की वजह से उनका जो एरिया है इट हैज बीन कैप्चर्ड, देन दे मूव फ्रॉम द बॉर्डर illegally, they cross because local people don't want such people. Decisions regarding how many people can be absorbed as citizens in a country poses a difficult humanitarian and political problem for many states. क्योंकि ह्यूमैनिटी कहती है करो, बट अगर आप ऐसे करोगे तो आप अपनी एरिया को देखो. अगर हम कहते हैं पर कैपिटा या फिर हम कहते हैं पर स्क्वायर मीटर में इतने लोगों को रहना चाहिए, बट इफ वी आर गिविंग शेल्टर टू एवरीवन देन वेयर विल बी द स्पेस फॉर अस. प्रैक्टिकल प्रॉब्लम है. Many countries have a policy of accepting those fleeing from persecution or war, but they may not want to accept unmanageable numbers of people or expose a country to security risk. आपको स्टार्टिंग में मैंने बताया था दैट दिस मतलब कि सबसे पहला जो रेफ्यूजीज होते हैं उनको हम रेफ्यूजी से ज्यादा थ्रेट ज्यादा वो करते हैं. सिंस देर आर सर्टेन grounds on which we have this suspicion. India prides itself on providing refuge to persecuted people as it did with Dalai Lama and his followers in 1958. As I told that this was, we had an agreement with China, Panchsheel, and as per that we were not supposed to interfere in each other's territorial matters. Dalai Lama always fostered that आपका जो तिब्बत है it is not part of China, whereas China claims it to be part of its territory. So there were some मतलब इस वजह से there was a kind of civil war and Dalai Lama had to flee from Tibet. And at that time जो हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर थे उन्होंने उनको यहाँ पर विथ रिस्पेक्ट यहाँ पर जो है दिया था refuge in Dharamshala, that's near Manali. Still it is there. Entry of people from neighboring countries has taken place along all the borders of Indian state, and the process continues. And even the process continues, the protest continues. Like in Assam and West Bengal, मतलब कि there is always a Assam गण परिषद जो है it was formed because of this. क्योंकि उनका मानना था कि उनकी एरिया के अंदर फॉरेनर एंट्री ज्यादा है. Many of the people remained as stateless people for many years or generation living in camp or illegal migrants. only a relatively few of them are eventually granted citizenship. Such problems pose a challenge to the promise of democratic citizenship, which is that rights and identity. I told you about the area in Simapuri in Delhi. Again, it is actually a hub of illegal migrants. And personally, I even know that because the people who live there, they tell that they are going to Bangladesh. So still, that is a big question ki they live here, work here, but still they are not citizens of this part. They don't get all those facilities. Although many people cannot achieve citizenship of a state of their choice, no alternative identity exists for them. The problem of stateless people, मतलब जो कहीं के नहीं रहते, उनके यहाँ से वो रिफ्यूज हो चुके, यहाँ पर उनको नहीं है, so they are having no state. It is an important one confronting the world today. Borders of states are still redefined by war or political dispute. And for the people caught up in such disputes, the consequences may be severe. Like we are having the border dispute with some of the countries. फिर वहां से अगर वहां पे अगर कुछ भी होता है तो जो वहां लोकल लोग हैं उनके लिए प्रॉब्लम होती है. They may lose their homes, political identities, security, and may be forced to migrate. Can citizenship provide a solution? If not, what kind of alternative? Do we need to try and evolve a more genuinely universal identity? मतलब अब वो नेशनल आइडेंटिटी नहीं है. मतलब उनका कहने का मतलब क्या है कि वो नेशनल आइडेंटिटी अब नहीं है. हमने उनको इंडिया का आइडेंटिटी नहीं दिया है, तो अब क्या किया जाए? तो व्हाट दे सजेस्ट इज, ऐसे लोग मजबूरी में जो एक कंट्री को छोड़कर दूसरी कंट्री में आ जाते हैं, उनको एक ग्लोबल मतलब एक ऐसा एक हमें बनाना चाहिए एस्पेक्ट जहां पर दे आर ग्लोबल, यानी कि दे आर ऑल्सो गिवन सर्टन राइट्स नॉट अंडर द नेशनल बट अंडर द ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप. दैट मे सॉल्व उनका ये कहना है. कंसिडर द फॉलोइंग स्टेटमेंट्स. There was an outpouring of sympathy and help for victims of tsunami, which affected a number of countries in South Asia. International network link terrorists today. The UN is working with different states to try and prevent the spread of bird flu and possible emergence of human viral pandemic. What is a common thing? It tells that we are living in a global world. मतलब आज जो आपके टेररिस्ट हैं, they are not born to one particular state. They are considered as a threat to the entire world. When any kind of natural disaster takes place, the entire countries come together to help them. Similarly, UN is also trying to work with the, जैसे अभी हमारे when pandemic was there, I think most of us followed the news which WHO gave. WHO ने हमें जो न्यूज दिया था हम उस पर ज्यादा दे रहे थे. That is because they are trying to control it not only in one country but across the globe. इससे हमें क्या पता लग रहा है? That we are not now living in one particular country. We are now living in a global world, global village. We live today in an interconnected world. New means of communication such as internet, TV, cell phones have brought major change. In the past, it might have taken months for news about development of one part known to another. Very, very true. But new modes have put us immediate contact with the development in different parts of the globe. We can watch disasters and war on our TV screens as they are taking place. The first TV जो war था, that was India and US and Vietnam का war था, which was also called as a TV war. Then of course there were war with मतलब कि US and Iran वाला था, which you will be studying in the very first or second chapter of class 12th. Satellite मतलब कि उसको हमने सीधा देखा था. This has helped to develop sympathy, shared concern among people in different parts. पहले ये होता था वहां हुआ है, ये बात हमें बाद में पता लगती थी, तो हम लोग कुछ कर नहीं सकते थे। आज क्या है, वी हैव द मीन्स टू इवन हेल्प देम, वी हैव द मीन्स टू इवन हेल्प देम, वी हैव द मीन्स टू इवन रीच आउट टू देम। Supporters of global citizenship argue that although a world community, a global society does not yet exist, and people already feel linked to each other across national boundary. They would see the outpouring of help जो पहला हमारा है, जैसे कैलेमिटी हुआ तो वो लोग ट्राई करते हैं, दैट इज ग्लोबल। एक तरह से वी आर नॉट नाउ सिटीजन ऑफ वन कंट्री, we may be Indian, but we have a global link. हमारी सिंपैथी सिर्फ अपनी कंट्री से नहीं जा रही है, हमारी कंट्री हर एक उस इंसान से जाती है जिसके साथ कुछ बुरा हो रहा है। The concept of national citizenship assumes that our state can provide us with protection and right which we need to live with dignity. But states today are faced with many problems which they cannot tackle by themselves. In this situation, individual right guaranteed by state sufficient to protect the freedom of people today? Or has the time come to move to human rights and global citizenship? One of the main attractions of notion of global citizenship is it might make it easier to deal with problems which extend across the national boundaries. We have been going for many summits, like आपका environmental problem है उसके लिए global summit आपके हुए, अभी जो economic था उसके लिए G20 हुआ। तो ऐसे में हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, मिलजुल कर कोऑपरेटिव एक्शन लेने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। तो अगर हम इसको मिलजुल कर कोऑपरेटिव एक्शन ले रहे हैं, उसको हम बाय मींस ऑफ पॉलिटिकल मींस, बाय प्रोवाइडिंग अ ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप, इफ वी आर ट्राइंग, विल इट बी पॉसिबल? फॉर इंस्टेंस, it might be easier and acceptable solution to the issue of migrants and stateless peoples। मतलब अगर वो लोग अपने यहाँ से निकल गए, हमारे यहाँ पर आ गए, बट दे आर नॉट पार्ट ऑफ अवर कंट्री नाउ, नाउ दे आर नॉट पार्ट ऑफ देयर ओन कंट्री, उनके लिए मे बी एक ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप का मतलब दे मे बी प्रोवाइडेड सर्टेन राइट्स विच दे मे यूज टू लिव डिग्निफाइड। जैसे अभी मैंने आपको बताया कि द लाइफ ऑफ माइग्रेंट्स इन द कैंप्स, इट इज रियली पैथेटिक। In the previous section, we saw that equal citizenship within a country can be threatened by socio-economic inequalities or other problems. Such problems can ultimately only be solved by government and people of that particular society. हमारी जो आपस की प्रॉब्लम है उसे तो हमारा ही गवर्नमेंट करेगा। Therefore, full and equal membership remains important for people today. But the concept of global reminds us national citizen might need to be supplemented by an awareness that we live in interconnected world, and that is we need, it is also a need for us to strengthen our links with people in different parts of the world and ready to work with people and government across national boundaries. But on the other hand, if we say global citizenship, there are many people, those who said कि अगर ग्लोबल मिलेगा ना तो दैट वुड ओनली फोर्स द माइग्रेंट्स टू मूव फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर। सेकेंडली, कुछ लोगों का ये भी कहना है कि ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप से एक और प्रॉब्लम आती है, और वो ये प्रॉब्लम है कि वी डोंट हैव द शेयर्ड कल्चर, तो दैट मे बी अ डेंट टू आवर कल्चर, कल्चरल जो हेट्रोजेनिटी है उसके लिए हो सकता है। लाइक इन 12th standard we have one beautiful chapter which deals with the same thing, but it doesn't deal with citizenship. इट डील्स दैट कि हम जब ग्लोबलाइजेशन ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड में रह रहे हैं तो दैट हैज आल्सो पोज्ड थ्रेट टू मेनी कल्चरल, हमारा जो मतलब कि फॉलो है उसको करता है। तो इसीलिए कई लोग ग्लोबल सिटीजनशिप को जो है इतना अभी पसंद नहीं करते हैं, बिकॉज दे डोंट वांट दैट हेट्रोजिनस टू कम। ठीक है, एज अ माइग्रेंट दे हैव कम, एज मतलब कि दे हैव अप्लाइड फॉर इमिग्रेशन ड्यू टू, अब आपको पता है when such calamities happen, don't think that every country is ready to accept. No, India has been one of them. India has a pride of being one of them. कहीं पर भी कोई प्रॉब्लम हुई है तो हमने एक्सेप्ट किया है, वेदर इट वाज फ्रॉम नेपाल और इट वाज फ्रॉम बर्मा और इट वो मतलब म्यांमार और इट वाज फ्रॉम बांग्लादेश, वी हैव ऑलवेज स्टूड, हमने उनके लिए आगे बढ़कर काम किया है. बट दिस इज नॉट इन केस ऑफ ऑल दिस कंट्रीज. Many of the countries they don't allow, and if they find, then there are so many strict law. तो क्वेश्चन ये बनता है कि अब ये जो लोग मजबूरी में एक जगह से दूसरी जगह चले गए, लाइक पैलेस्टीनियंस, सूडान में दारफूर वाला एरिया, अब उनका क्या किया जाए. एंड इवन लाइक सिटीजन सॉरी कंट्रीज लाइक इंडिया में हम कितने लोगों को एज रिफ्यूजीज ले, बिकॉज when you are taking anyone, that means you are providing some protection. हमारे पास भी तो उतने रिसोर्सेज होने चाहिए ना. एंड लोकल जो लोग हैं दे वुड डेफिनेटली रेजिस्ट. एक सिंगल चीज है, घर के अंदर दो जने हैं, एक पिज्जा है तो दो जने खाएंगे, लेकिन चार होंगे तो वो चार में बटेगा ना. तो द राइट्स, देन दी मतलब रिसोर्सेज वुड आल्सो बी डिवाइडेड. So this is a very big issue that politically people have been facing across the world. But anywhere, when we talk about citizenship, acquiring them for different countries, there are different rules, as I have already discussed with you, and it depends on like आपके जो developed country हैं उनके जो rules हैं वो थोड़े से stern हैं. They are more onto their own language, and others हमारे यहाँ पर थोड़ा सा अलग है. Like we provide the citizenship on basis of ascent, मतलब हमारे जो descent है वो, then naturalization. In some of the countries also naturalization is there, but उस naturalization के भी कुछ rules होते हैं, मतलब in at what time this takes place, what other formalities one has to follow for applying that. Because citizenship, जब हम political theory बोलते हैं, when we talk about democracy, तो the first thing comes is rights. Rights आती है तो rights किसको मिलते हैं? Citizens को. तो citizens कौन होते हैं? That is citizenship. So that is the complete chapter which we call as citizenship. In this chapter, you will also see one of the area which I had discussed with you about the black movement in US. मैंने आपको जब स्टार्टिंग में बताया था, because this was there in your 10th standard years back. अब तो this is not there as a part of our syllabus. That particular chapter is now not there. This is the one. In 1950, the emergence of civil rights movement, that is the black movement भी हम कहते हैं, it's also called as the black movement. It was there with the population of southern states of US. Such inequalities, मतलब वहां पर भी था segregation law, जहां आपके जिस तरीके से आपके साउथ अफ्रीका में था उसी तरीके से these people were denied with certain rights, political and civil rights in their region. And this was taken by Martin Luther King. मतलब इसमें पता क्या हुआ था? There was one Olympic हुआ था, एंड ओलंपिक के अंदर व्हेन मतलब कि अनाउंस हुआ तो पब्लिकली मतलब अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड इट वाज एन उसके अंदर ये लोग खड़े हुए, द ब्लैक्स, विद द फिस्ट ऐसे करके, एंड जब नेशनल एंथम प्ले हो रहा था तो इन्होंने अपना सर झुका रखा था, एंड दे शोड द पावर ऑफ ब्लैक. दैट इज हाउ द ब्लैक मूवमेंट एक्चुअली केम आउट. लोगों को पता लगा. उन्होंने कई आर्गुमेंट्स दिए, that is in terms of self-worth, dignity. Second, he said social leprosy. Leprosy का मतलब क्या होता है आपका? जैसे किसी को वो स्किन की बीमारी हो जाती है तो उसको अलग कर देते हैं, उसी तरीके से they are. And this has a psychological wound. He argued the practice of segregation diminishes the quality of life. So हमारे यहाँ पर भी with the Dalits it happens. Similarly, some baseball teams had to be disbanded. मतलब उन्होंने, as the authorities did not want to accept black players. Thirdly, the segregation law create artificial boundary between people and prevent them from cooperating with each other. तो उन्होंने कहा इन लॉस को जो है आपको अबॉलिश करना चाहिए. We must not allow a creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. And this was done in the Olympics that was there. और उसमें जब वो तीन लोग टॉप हुए थे ना, तो they stood. And उसमें से एक इंसान जो था ना, he was Australian. He was not an मतलब कि he was not American. He was an Australian, but he supported this idea. बाद में पता क्या हुआ, वो जो दो लड़के थे, द वन whose were blacks, even though they were taken out from their college for such indiscipline, लेकिन बाद में उनके कॉलेज में ही उनकी मूर्ति बनाई गई थी. एंड ये जो थर्ड इंसान था, द वन हु सपोर्टेड फ्रॉम ऑस्ट्रेलिया, उसको उसके टीम से बाहर निकाला गया था. बट स्टिल ऑन द global platform they stood and they spoke about the black movement. And that is how it came to know, हम लोगों को, हम मतलब कॉमन लोगों को ये चीजें जो है पता लगी. ये वाला जो मैंने आपको बताया था, उस दिन मैंने एक मतलब आपको एक स्टोरी बताई थी अबाउट साउथ अफ्रीका, जहां पर वाइट्स जो हैं दे आर नॉट अलाउड टू, मतलब द ब्लैक्स जो हैं दे आर नॉट अलाउड टू मूव. अगर उनको मूव भी करना पड़ता है तो दे हैव टू क्रॉल लाइक इंसेक्ट्स और एनिमल्स. दे कैन नॉट ईट एनीथिंग वहां पर. तो दिस इज द वन जहां पे आपके जो प्रेसिडेंट मुगाबे थे उन्होंने किया था. अकॉर्डिंग टू द ऑफिशियल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, in Zimbabwe, 4,400 white families own 32% of agriculture. About 1 million black peasant families own just 16 meters. While the land that is with white families are fertile and irrigated, the land in the hands of black population are less fertile and unirrigated. तो इससे ये पता लगता है कि जो whites थे उन लोगों ने black से छीन लिया था. Whites have now been in Zimbabwe for generation और वो खुद को Zimbabweans मानते हैं. बट अगर हम उनको देखें तो दे आर माइनॉरिटीज 0.06%. एंड मुगाबे जो है ही अनाउंस टू टेक ओवर. व्हाट डज द सिटीजनशिप वुड यूज टू सपोर्ट और अपोज द क्लेम ऑफ ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट? ऑफ कोर्स both of them should be given equality, like it happened in South Africa when Dr. Nelson Mandela became the president. He said जो भी पहले हुआ हम उसको खत्म करेंगे. There would be equality, mutual respect for each other, and all of them will be now living with equal rights. That is where the citizenship idea was applied. अगर हम ऐसा कई मतलब कि क्वेश्चन उसमें देखते हैं प्रैक्टिकली, तो देयर हैव बीन प्रॉब्लम्स इवन विद द इंडिजीनियस पॉपुलेशन आल्सो, विद द पीपल हु हैव माइग्रेटेड वहां पर भी. Still this problem continues, but the concept of citizenship says that when you are living in a territory, that area becomes your own. So you must be provided with certain rights and privileges जिससे आप अपनी जिंदगी को with dignity you are able to live. So that's a concept of citizenship.